You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Today got a great episode talking to an actual podcast listener, a longtime listener, and a real life salesperson. And we're going to go through his journey. Ron is joining us today. He's going to share with us his journey from, commodity selling, basically account management, service-based selling, not selling services, but servicing existing customers. He got frustrated with that, wanted to take a step back in his career, and became a sales development rep, getting meetings for other people. Today, he's a senior strategic account manager. And he's going to take us kind of how he went through that journey. And, how the podcast helped him. That's all good to hear and everything. But we're going to talk about what's really working today in sales and what's really helping him get into these big accounts that he's been trying to get into for years. And these cold accounts, they don't really know him. They don't know the problem that they have. They don't are even aware of that there are solutions out there for them. So we're going to get into that, but I also want to remind you that you can get my free ebook, How Large Companies Make Product Selections, on my website, b2brevenue.com. Just sign up on the email. You'll receive an email back with the link, not the book, a link to the book. And just click on that link and you'll get it. And the book is yours. It's a real book. It's not a fluff book. It was a real published book on Amazon. I took it down, and now I'm giving it away for free to you, my loyal listeners. Thank you. Really appreciate everybody is telling everybody about the show. Let's get into it. And remember, check out all the sponsors of the show, Pipedrive, Nudge.ai, Prezi Business. You got to check them out. They're really helping people crush it this year in 2018. And we're really going to be talking today about how do you get into large accounts that are completely cold. You got no leads. You barely have any contacts. Let's get Ron on the line here. Hey, Ron, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, Brian. Well, thanks for having me. I actually had a goal for myself that I don't think I've ever mentioned to anybody except for being on my goal board here, was to be on your podcast to kick off 2019, because I really wanted to talk about some of my successes in 18. So obviously I'll dive a little bit into this, but your podcast and some of the stuff I'm learning in your courses, because I'm in all of them, are really having a huge impact on me. So maybe this can be part one in a series as we move through the year and into 2019. So this is really cool for me to be on this.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It's great to have somebody who's, listened to the podcast, who invested in the course. And I think you've put a tremendous amount of energy into it as well, as opposed to just, looking for a silver bullet that you can apply, but understanding that it is something that, you have to work. It's, you can teach somebody how to play the piano, but they actually have to play the piano.
Yeah, and you make a great point there. There is no silver bullets, and that's something that I've had to probably learn a little bit of the hard way in my journey through sales, and I'll dive into my story in just a minute. But what you just said is so profound, and I don't know if a lot of people quite grasp that. You really have to be methodical and think about how you're going to step out the whole process when you're going to go in, especially in a complex sale, which is something that I'm still wrapping my arms around. I feel like it changes all the time. The foundation's the same, but now I'm, in the complex sale class, and I'm trying to dig into the map to money, and it's a lot harder to step back and zoom out and look down at that and think about the whole process and everything that has to go into it. So you're right when you say there's no silver bullet. It's like learning how to play the piano, etc. You've really got to stop and put the time and the effort into honing your skills and your crafts. And that's something that I've been really focused on over the last 3-4 years in my career.
Yeah, and it is something that you can just get from listening to a podcast. Podcasts are great. I love listening to them. I love giving them. But, sales is a doing profession. It is something that you really have to figure out on your own, come up with a system. So few people do. Most people think it's their charming personality, or they rely on the product, or they have a great territory or good customers. What's your sales story? How'd you get into it? Where'd you start?
Yeah, so as I'm going to get ready to dive into this, a little precursor to it. So I started listening to you back in 2014. So I really turned off a lot of my NFL podcasts and Sports Center and all this other stuff that was consuming the other part of me, where I was just kind of working, 8 to 5 or 6 to 6 or whatever the time was, and then going home and shutting off. I found your podcast, and there's one of them in there. I don't remember exactly which one, but you started talking about thinking like a salespreneur. And I thought, man, what is that? So as we dug into that, I started thinking, I need to really start to take ownership of my career. So I asked myself, where am I today? Where am I going? Where do I want to be? And really started to build out my process of where I wanted my career to start to traject. And in 2007 through 2014, I was an account executive for a commercial printing company. I had some really good accounts, and it's kind of funny that you just said what you said about relying on an account or a territory or a personality or a relationship. I had some great accounts, all of which those 4 things were the keys to why I had those accounts, right? So as I looked at that job for that 7 years, and when I stepped back in 2014, I said, I'm really becoming an order taker here. I'm not adding any value or creating any value for any of my customers anymore. Sure, we go to lunch sometimes, or I bring them some coffees in the morning, and we kind of sit around and talk, and they throw me a project, and I go back to the office, and I write up all the specs, and I hand it to the rest of the team, and then I deliver the samples when it's all done. And then I track the shipment. And I was thinking, wow, if there's ever a job that's going to be taken over by AI in the next 5-10 years, maybe this is it. So I had to pull myself back, and I realized, where is it the business of sales going, and where can I make an impact? And it was generating new business. So I needed to really hone those skills big time.
And too many people think of themselves as employees. And I think that's a very dangerous attitude, especially if you're in sales. Because I think you're right. You're in that case where, how much better am I than a web page? How much?
Exactly.
Or, an outsourced call center. Or, if you're not, other than showing up physically, and then all of a sudden, how long are they going to pay you that well, or cut your territory down and kind of take a lot of the fun out of it and a lot of the upside? Because I see the upside as the people who are creating business, people who can go from nothing and build something.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I started looking at and thinking about and analyzing the industry that I was in. And I knew I had to make a change. So when I looked around at different industries, I wanted to go into the tech space. You've talked a lot about the advantages of being in technology sales. There's lots of different reasons why I decided to do it. So I did. Now, I had to then take a step back in my career. So I went from an outside account executive with these great accounts, and I went to go be a SDR, or a sales development rep, for an analytics company here in Southern California. And I had one sole focus. That was to generate meetings for new accounts for my account team at the highest level possible that we could get in. And so that was my pure focus was on that. And that's what I was looking for. I was looking for something I could back up and hone that skill and that skill set right there, because like we said earlier, there's no silver bullet. This is a process. We're already at no, so why not take our time to yes and go and really start to set up a process and a strategic methodology to open new doors and to start to generate new business. Now, my goal was to get back out into the field. So when I started, I said, what does that track look like? And, my boss told me, and I said, all right. I put a plan in place to go and do that and execute on it, and I made it happen. So in 2015 is when I started at the company in technology, and in 2016, about halfway through, I was promoted to an outside account executive, and that's what I've been doing since. All new business, all new prospects, and that's where I've stayed. We have an existing account base and then a new account base, but moving out into the field and having the skill set that I developed as an SDR, just taking that into the field and then being able to expand on it because I have a lot more freedom. I can drop things off, I can send out packets, I can show up at offices, I can more freely go to lunches or coffees. It's just all kind of exploded for me, and I've ramped up really quickly and gotten meetings with high level, people at my accounts that kind of the leadership team turns and looks and says, what is that guy doing to get these meetings? And now to kick off this year, with your courses that came online, it just added a whole new element to what I'm able to do and how I'm able to have these meetings and to get people's attention. And like you say, start the conversation as opposed to, we can help you with your return on ROI or something along those lines. Yeah. I'm at a whole other level now of conversations with people to where they're saying, I've been talking about myself the whole time. What do you guys do? Yeah. And that's powerful when that comes back to you. And it really works. So I'm happy to dive into some of that and go over some of the stories and success I've had with the courses, if that's what would be good for people to hear.
Well, yeah, because the impetus for the course wasn't necessarily to make money for me. Of course, I do charge for it, but the impetus was that I was going out in the field, going to companies and trying to teach, how to close the complex sale. But what I was hearing was, we're not getting leads, and trying to get meetings is killing us. Do you have anything on that? And I'd say, well, what are you doing? And they all showed me the same. Every company I went to, the emails, you could just take out the company name and the features and benefits, and they ask for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, and they all look the same. And I go, well, how effective are these? And they go, not at all. And I've talked to, and there's a couple of SDRs in the class where they're getting, less than one meeting a month, and that's, meaning cold outreach, not warm inbound. When somebody comes to you, there's interest, and they've already, want to talk to you. But share some success stories that you've had.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that you said there that resonated with me, inbound versus outbound. For a little while, I was relying on this inbound leads, and I thought they were the greatest thing ever. But man, I had to grind even for those leads to get on the phone with me or to talk to me. When I started saying, you know what, I'm going to go outbound and I'm going to take control and go start to generate interest and start conversations, that's when my career flipped around, when I moved into the SDR role. So relying just on those inbounds, they're great, but if you can go take the message to whoever your target is, I found that that's much more effective, but you've got to have a process in place and a plan and be strategic with it and execute on it. So just what you said there was what resonated with me, inbound versus outbound. Yeah. In terms of how to manage each one of them. The inbound's great, don't get me wrong, but the outbound
works, because usually if it's inbound, they're not just looking at you. Exactly. They're looking at you and all your competitors, and they've already have some preconceived notions. And typically the person who is coming in as a lead isn't really that close to the decision. They're typically been assigned to do it, and they're kind of a gatekeeper almost. So they're not really that helpful. And usually, what are they asking for? They're asking for price and a free eval and maybe a demo, and they want to keep you at arm's length. So it's still very hard to build a relationship with them. And when I say relationship, I don't mean a friend, but the ability to share information with each other, to help each other, to see, where do you stand against the alternatives? What's the timing? What's the driver behind all of this? And I think that's the downside of inbound. And plus, I'd say 80% of inbound is people just looking for valuable content and have almost no interest in your product. They just want, the free ebook and stuff, and they want to learn. And they may be out of work consultants or your competitors or, just, bored people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So if you can take your value, and whatever that value might be, that's in the eye of the beholder, right? Whoever you're going after values kind of the top line, and then you've got to decide and understand what does that value mean to the prospect or the person you're reaching out to. If you take it to them, it's a whole different conversation, and that's why the Get the Meeting course that you're doing and that I'm in really started to change my mentality and how I focus and how I start meetings. And the success, I'll just be honest with you, it's actually blown me away. When I took the course, I'm thinking, is this really going to work? And I said, I'm going to dive both feet in and I'm going to do this. And I'm going to start executing on the stuff that you were teaching in there. And I don't want to give too much of it away because people really need to go and take it and understand it and make it their own. So if I dive into the intricacies of it, I don't think that's valuable. But what I can tell you is I've had probably now 4 or 5 meetings that I've set up that are directly related to this. One gentleman I was chasing for 2 years, and he's a chief digital officer now. He was recently promoted, and that was the trigger event. So as soon as I saw that, I went through and then I just started a conversation with him via email. Now this guy, like I said, I've been chasing him for 2 years with the whole, we can help you with this and we can drive this initiative for you. I read in your annual report about X. What are you guys doing to solve Y? Nothing would ever come about. But the minute that he changed jobs, I saw the trigger event. I went through the process of starting the conversation with them the way that you teach, gave him the compliment. He replied very, very simply, "Thank you, I really appreciate it." Hitting him back with a question and then putting something out there. I think I put out there for him, hey, I'm sure you guys are already doing this, but would a conversation about this be worth it? If so, let's grab some lunch one day. What do you know? He writes me back half an hour later and says, I'd be open to this conversation. Never had I gotten a response like that from this person at a very high level, at a very large company, at a very large prospect. And we're at a C-level conversation with this gentleman now that I started all based on the teachings in the course. So just that story right there, it blew me away. And I thought, wow, this is very powerful because everything else I tried didn't work.
And I think what worked for you was that you pushed yourself into doing it. I think a lot of people in the course are, tell me what to do. Give me exact template. And I go, okay, send me who you want to meet and what you do. And I will write all the emails for them. But you got to embrace it because I can only do so much for the person. But I mean, I think what you say about how it made you feel as a person, you didn't feel like a sleazy salesperson.
Not at all.
Not
at all.
Feel like you're tricking anyone?
No. In fact, I felt like I was starting a conversation with him. And on some level, too, I feel more in control of the conversation that we're going to have. Because it's not specifically about business per se. I can kind of take it a couple of different ways because we're having a conversation. I didn't position a PowerPoint deck or a specific solution that we have. It's more of a, like we said, it's human to human selling. I'm having a conversation with him now, as opposed to bringing in a whole team of people to do this demo that he's going to have to sit through. Right? That will hopefully that will come. The point is to have this conversation, get the next one, and to move to that. But to kick it off in a whole different way, the way I feel about it, and I'm sure he feels less, not threatened, but less, oh, here's another sales guy that's coming at me with another solution, because these guys are hit all day long, hundreds of emails and phone calls and everything. So just the differentiator in it is just, it's a game changer. But like you said, you have to own it. You have to make it your own. I did what works for me. And I knew I was going to target him. I had everything that I wanted to say to him backed up into the process, waiting for an event or looking for something that I could go after him with. And I made it my own. I have the framework from you, but it's my own set of rules basically that I follow, and my own methodology with it, with the conversation starter as the framework.
Right. And you're no industry expert either, are you?
No.
Right.
I have a team that will help me with that. What we do is very complex, especially when you're talking to somebody at this level. So for me to be able to go first with this type of conversation and then pull in the resources that I need, as that let's get the next meeting piece, it's a notch in the tool belt that I can use as we have our conversation.
Right. And I think what also holds people back in the course is they have to unlearn some bad habits. And they're not bad habits. They're just habits that don't work anymore because the world's changed so much in the last 5 years. You just think of the number of companies, because it's so easy to start a company today. I mean, I don't know if you remember before the cloud, it's like you used to have to buy hardware, then you had to buy a database, then you had to buy middleware, and then you had to hire these engineers. Today you can do it all. You can outsource 80-90% of it. And so there's so many options and ideas, and now there's all this sales automation that's bombarding people with alternatives, and they can't understand it. And, we have to take a step back. And if you look at, I'm sure you've seen sales people or entrepreneurs who were able to get into companies and have conversations. But that was because they were experts and they were talking, peer to peer. But, you can't spend 2 years becoming an industry expert. It's just,
you don't have time.
You don't have time.
I don't have time for all that. Now, do I know the industry enough to carry a conversation? Yes. Can I sit down with an executive and talk to them about some of their challenges and where we fit in? Yes. But if we're going to dive down into some of the weeds of maybe technology or a specific business outcome, I have to pull in some subject matter experts when it comes to some of that. But I've got to get us there first. That's part of my job, right? So, and we don't even get there if we can't get a meeting. Right. That's the whole. You have to get in the door, right? And you've got to differentiate. So to be able to get in the door, at least that's how I feel, and what's been successful for me. And like you said, it's a mindset change. I've had to change my mindset. There's still a time and a place, I believe, for some of the methodologies around we can deliver this value for this piece of your business that we know you're having a issue or challenge or maybe an opportunity for. Those still exist for me, and I still do them. But I have to shut those off. I have to shut that part of my mind off and compartmentalize it and move over to this, because it's a whole other way of thinking.
Right.
And doing things. And I think sometimes it's hard, and it's in the beginning. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I think we talked about this a little bit in office hours. That was a challenge for me to move myself over and say, okay, how am I going to do this? Because it's so much different than anything else I've been taught or done in the past. And that's all been rooted in me for the last 10 years, right?
It is. And I have gone through this with, I was talking to a CEO who I'd been working with for a while. I obviously want him as a client. He got funded. We caught up. And all I did was for an hour help him improve his process because he was so excited, that he was getting 30%. But he was essentially paying for it. He was exchanging, something for that opportunity to talk to them. And I go, well, I could get you up to 80% without paying anything. And he was like, tell me how. And I was like, it was really hard for him to understand it. And then I try and bring him through the science of it, of how people think and why you have to go through these stages. And frankly, from my career, in the 90s, there was inbound was real inbound, and it was a beauty contest, and you won the deals. In the 2000s, you had to do outbound, and email worked, the phone still worked. And then probably 2 or 3 years ago, social was super powerful. But nothing is super powerful today. You have to find a way of connecting with people and going through that process for cold outreach.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. When you're doing cold outreach, you notice a common theme when people listen to this podcast is the word process and strategy and execution. You have to understand your process, whatever that might be. Everybody has something different. Mine's different than yours, but you add things to it and you change and you mix it up. But you have to have a plan and you have to execute on that plan in order to see the success. And that requires not just one random email, one random phone call, one random stop by the office, and then you wait and you hope your phone's going to ring or you're going to get an email back because you're going to get the appointment. That's not how it works.
No.
These people are really busy,
yeah.
Right? So think about how busy your day is or my day is or anybody's day, right? And you've got hundreds of people that want your time and your attention, especially if you're in a role that's considered, let's call it power, or at least assumed power, because when you're doing cold outreach, you're kind of making some educated guesses on who the right people may or may not be. They're getting bombarded all the time. So you've really got to step back and understand, what's my process going to be to go meet with this person? What's the outcome that I want? And then build yourself backwards. At least that's how I do it. And this first part of it to start the conversation it's huge, because now I have a whole cadence to start that. And then I can move myself into the other pieces of that, because ultimately I want to close a deal and make a sale. But if it's kicked off on a whole different level, it's completely different. And a great example of that is an executive that I was chasing. I started a conversation with this person on LinkedIn. We went back and forth with a few things, nothing related at all to my job, what problems she has, any challenges, anything. It was just a conversation around a post that she had made. And we just went through this process. I thought I connected with her on LinkedIn. We traded a couple messages. We've gone through this whole process. We're meeting in a couple of weeks, all based on stuff from the course. I've not one time told her what we do, what problems we solve, what challenges that we have. She's been the one talking the whole time to me.
Yeah.
I know what she's doing now because we've been just having a conversation via email and LinkedIn.
And that's it. And
so, but we spun it into a meeting.
Right.
So,
and what people do is they lose control. They start talking about themselves, and that's when you've lost it. And hey, I really appreciate you sharing the story and everything. If people want to find out that you're a real person and not related to me, how do we prove that?
You didn't pay me to say this stuff. This is just, I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about sales. I'm kind of a sales junkie. So this stuff works, and I'm excited to be using it and building on it. And now that I'm in the complex sales course, we're digging into that. And so it's just building and compounding on top of itself. So yeah, if people want to get a hold of me, I'm on LinkedIn. It's under Ron Masi, Masi. I'm happy to connect. and you can find me there. So I really appreciate you taking some time, Brian, to have this with me. Like I said, I've listened to you for years, so this was really cool for me to have this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Hey, I really like to talk with Ron. I really like to see people embrace the content of both the podcasts and the courses and really apply it to what they're doing, to own it, to understand that, listening to what someone says or read a book about something or watch a video about something, and then you have to try it, you have to get feedback, you have to try it again, and you have to keep pushing and try and understand exactly what are you doing right, what are you doing wrong, and how can you do better at it, and to also slow down and to understand that the person that you're selling to is a person and where are they at in their decision process. Do they feel the pain? Do they feel the desire yet? Are they out exploring alternatives and solutions? What outcome do they want to get, and how do we get that outcome for them, and how do we turn them into referenceable customers, people who will help us get the next customer? That's the cycle. That's the cycle of success, the cycle that we want. That's the compounding that we get in sales. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hey, this week there was a ton of great content that came out by the partners. Gong did a great piece on opening a cold call. I have my own style. I did some on the Sales Questions podcast. You can listen to that. That's been my most effective approach over the years. I think when you are cold calling somebody, completely cold, they don't know who you are. They haven't filled out a form. You're not responding to their request. That's different. That's kind of a warmer call, and there's all kinds of talk about it. And I'm finding the phone, is less and less effective, but still the only means in a lot of industries. And if it is, you got to use it, and you got to use it in the most effective way. So check out Chris Orlov's blog post on that at gong.io. And I'll be doing a series about it on both the YouTube channel, Maverick Method on YouTube, as well as on the Sales Questions podcast to kind of help people with it. Because, either you're forced to do it by your manager or you're forced to do it by your industry. Your industry isn't on social or isn't responsive or accessible via email, that the phone is probably the only tool you still have, that or the drop by. So check that out. Check out also what nudge.ai is doing. They've got great stuff on how people are making buying decisions. This will help you understand what you're up against and how to maybe change your strategy about getting in. Here we are at the beginning. We're pretty well into Q2. This is the time. This is the time to plant the seeds for the rest of the year. We think we got, 6, 8 months left. But, we lose July and August very quickly because of vacations. September comes, we're back, heads down again. Also, I'm doing a lot of stuff with Discover.org. I have Discover.org on the B2B revenue podcast, and we're talking about how to qualify the most likely people to buy, the people who have intent, that have an opportunity, and they're showing interest, and they match other people that are doing the same types of things. This is how you determine your A-level accounts, and this is critical because too many sales reps, they look at their CRM and it all looks the same. Everything looks equal. And it's just not. And we've got to prioritize based off of these things because it's our time. That's all we have. And we've got to make the best use of our time so we can blow our number away. That's it. I really appreciate everybody listening and everybody who shared my content on LinkedIn. Connect up with me on LinkedIn. If you see some of my stuff go by, I put out a funny video every morning. Just give it a like, a comment, a share. really appreciate all of that, and I'm very grateful. Check out b2brevenue.com. Get your free copy of the book, How Large Companies Make Product Selections, so you can kind of understand what they are going through. It is not what anyone else is teaching. Everyone else is teaching just a different version of the old school pitch. It doesn't work anymore. We're people. We got to understand that. We got to understand that we have to connect first. And you heard it today. So, and check out Ron, link up with him on LinkedIn so you know he's not my brother or relative in any way. He is very passionate about the course. He really got into it, and that's the difference. You have to get into it. You can't just like watch a video of how to play a piano and think you can play the piano. You have to play it. Tell me what I did right. Tell me what I did wrong. Okay, try this now. Okay, let's try this now. And that's what the Fridays are for. The office hours I have every other Friday on each of the courses is you get an hour of group consultation, of throwing around ideas, throwing around opportunities, feedback, examples, requests for new information. Check it out. I think you'll like it. All this stuff about the training is on the website at b2brevenue.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Want to know the truth, because deep down in places that you don't talk about are team and management meetings. You want me on that call. You need me on that call. We use words like fleet view, volume control, total cost of ownership. We use these words as a backbone of a life spent negotiating something. You use them as a punchline. I have neither the time nor inclination to explain myself to people who rise and sleep under the very blanket of revenue that I provide and then question the manner in which I provide it. I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, may I suggest you pick up a phone and make some sales calls. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to.
Did you expense the lap dances?
I did the job I was hired.
Did you expense the lap dances?
You're goddamn right I did!